Welcome to the Corsair chat today. Again, very excited to have James here. I'm going to give a quick bio on James and then allow him to kind of take the show. Really excited about the presentation. For those that don't know, James graduated from UMass Dartmouth CVPA in 1999. He received a BFA in digital media. He later earned an MFA in graphic design from Rhode Island School of Design. He worked with Fathom Information Design, leading data visualization projects for clients like Google, Nike, Samsung, and Volkswagen. He currently is an assistant professor of graphic design at BU, Boston University, and principal of Design Axl, a company that he founded. James, I know I've already told you, thank you 1,000 times. Thank you 1,001 for being here, and the show is yours.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wendy, Dylan, also for bringing me into this. And I'm going to show slides. So I'm going to show a lot of work. I'm really excited to be here and share my experiences from the days I was at UMass Dartmouth to today. Hopefully I can fit it all in the time. But whoever is out there, thanks for being here. And I think Spencer Ladd and his class is out there. So thank you all for being here. Let me get started. I'm going to share my screen. I'm James Grady, as Joshua said, UMass Dartmouth alumni from back in the day, 1999, and assistant professor of graphic design at Boston University and principal of Design Axl. So the talk is titled From North Dartmouth to Now, Design Pedagogy Full Circle. I honestly owe so much to my experience at UMass Dartmouth. I always knew I wanted to, be an artist. As a kid, it was like the thing I could do. It was really the only thing I thought I could do. It just really changed my life when I stepped onto the campus at UMass Dartmouth back in the day. Graduated high school in 1995. And, I definitely wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what it meant. I was from Rhode Island and I loved art. So I thought I wanted to go to Rhode Island School of Design, and it didn't make sense for my family financially. And, but when I found UMass Dartmouth, my mother actually helped me quite a bit with this. She researched that this was such a great program, and I got to talk to some of the people, but it was really the architecture that blew me away. I'd never seen anything like this before. I felt like I was like landing on a different planet, and to learn about Paul Rudolph and the brutalist architecture, I just thought this was so fascinating. I had to be here. So just, right from the design aspect of it, I just loved the campus, loved hearing the tales of Paul Rudolph and the stairs and the sort of the hauntings of Group 6 and all the different buildings really intrigued me. And so back in the day, this is kind of like what Adobe products look like. I remember having a computer when I was a kid, loving Mac Paint, loving these things, but never really working with Photoshop. And one of my closest friends at UMass Dartmouth had a computer with all like the Adobe programs. His dad was a graphic designer. I thought he was so cool. I thought his dad was cool. And he showed me some basic principles of Photoshop. And one of the like magical things he showed me was the rubber stamp tool. And I just thought it really was like making magic, that you could copy one thing and then make it happen over here. And it just got me so excited. Like the art, the curiosity, and the technology got me so excited about learning about a pedagogical format of design and art practices. And moving into more technology, and it's not all about the software for sure. It's all about, for me, it was foundation, painting, drawing, using gouache, like all sort of like the basic old school techniques, but also like really super excited and curious about the tools. And I had another friend who taught me about, we were using Illustrator, the very basics of Illustrator, taught me about the pen tool, taught me about the differences between a raster graphic and a vector graphic, and just kind of like blew my mind. And I loved the foundation program. I remember having Rick Creighton, who was my sculpture professor in freshman year, and he would just like smell the plaster and be like, nice fresh plaster. And I just loved the intensity of the art, but also the pedagogy of the structure, and then also, learning about design. So, I when I came into UMass Dartmouth, I wanted to be a graphic designer. I looked up in the library, about how to become an artist, commercial artist. I learned about Paul Rand, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to make logos. And if Spencer's out there, I remember telling him one of the first times meeting him, like, my friend Josh, who taught me about the rubber stamp tool, is like, you have to take a class with Spencer Ladd. He's the best, and he's going to teach you about design. And I was like, well, I really want to do this digital media, electronic imaging. I remember having the conversation with Spencer and saying, I want to do digital media, electronic imaging, but I really want to do the fundamentals of graphic design. I want to be the next Paul Rand. And I remember thinking back on that, that was, kind of like naive at the time, but I really believed it. So I took a few independent studies with Spencer, and one of them, he was very open on the experimental side, but also had a lot of structure to his typography, and was really formative for me typographically at the micro type level and the macro type level. So these are some sketches from a project Spencer and I worked on together. I worked with him as an independent study, and I was documenting all this vernacular signage up and down Route 6 out in North Dartmouth, and taking a picture of some of the automotive signage. I took all those photographs, redrew them in Illustrator, and then started making all these iterations and compositions, and eventually took the original sign, deconstructed it, made this very layered approach, and then brought it all back to simple typography. I then took that most complex illustration and projected it onto a 6-foot by 6-foot canvas. So really tried to, continue to be multidisciplinary from the drawing to the digital, and then back to the painting. And I still have this painting in process right behind me, if you can see it, that I never totally finished, but I kind of like it that it's in process. So it's just a daily reminder. I'm here at my home office, but it's a daily reminder of the experience I had at UMass Dartmouth. There's Spencer and ZD and I, October 2019, when we could actually be in person. I gave a lecture to their class. And so after during that time, I really fell in love with the digital experience. I fell in love with digital media. Flash was a thing, animation, and just the web in general seemed so fascinating. So I really wanted to explore that more after I graduated. And I remember, this is what the web looked like in the late 90s. And I thought it was fascinating. I just thought it was a new tool, but it was like, there was like the historical context of typography, as well as this edgy, grungy, like textural sort of Wild West of design that was happening in the 90s. And it was all happening sort of in real time, and you could just find something new every day. So I remember just being completely inspired by this. When I graduated from UMass Dartmouth, I was out in California right after graduation, working for a toy packaging company. And I remember going to the San Francisco MoMA and seeing this show called Art and Technological Times, which really blew my mind. It was installation, it was projection, it was interactive screens, it was print media. It was really like all of the things that I imagined, working on in design, and just was really formative to me. Just the way that like animation worked, interactivity worked, typography all worked together in this sort of beautiful form. And so this was all like .com bubble #1, and not to get like too nostalgic on it, but it was a great time to be a designer, especially someone who was interested in working on the web. Um, and I had a lot of opportunities when I was as a senior at UMass Dartmouth, and I was working with this creative, like headhunter placement person who put me in. I probably did 100 interviews at that time, and had offers to work at these different companies. And I remember coming really close to working for an agency that did all the Volkswagen web work, and it was really really cool. But there was just something that didn't quite feel right. And I wanted to be in a studio that was more multidisciplinary, a studio that was grounded in typography and form, and that also did print and digital media. And I wound up working for 11 years at a company called Core Group in Boston. And Core Group was founded by two UMass Dartmouth alums. It was SMU at the time. Karen Denby Smith and MB Sawyer were two of the founding principals of Core Group. And it was such a great place to work. I definitely there was a UMass Dartmouth connection for sure, but I just really admired these three partners. They made amazing work, and I owe a debt of gratitude for them for sure. And worked there for a long time. We did a lot of really interesting branding work. This was a project that we did for a printing company, and the metaphor was the butterfly and the spectrum of colors, which was really fun. We did all these color explorations. It rolled out into print material like folders. I also got to really hone my sense of typography and print production. And Karen was a student of Basel, and learned more about Swiss typography and Dutch design. This was a typeface, Gridnick, and I learned about Wim Crowell. So there was just like an extension of my education. We got to work a lot with photographers, so art directing, photo shoots, doing type and image manipulation. Again, doing all the profile photo shoots and really honing my sense of composition, photography, print, and typography. This is another project we did for another education institution in Boston, Emerson College. And this was really fun, like playing with print, but in an interactive way. So we did a lot of print work, but we also did a lot of screen-based work. So this was a project that we did for Emerson. This was really fun. And, the tools were so accessible at that time that we were able to go from beginning to end with whether it be a print piece or a tech piece. But as time went on, the projects became bigger, and we were teaming up more with development firms. So we were kind of like handing things off, almost like they were the printer and we were the designers. And I remember this project, and it was a really fun project. We got to do all the print material, we did all the photo shoots, we did all the video shoots. But I remember working on this project and feeling really confined by the content management system, and feeling like we were being directed almost by what the tool could do as opposed to what the creativity could do. So I have to say, at that point, I kind of fell out of love with the design on the web, because it felt like it was becoming a commodity, and it was being a little bit too restrictive. And I still like that piece for sure, and I designed it, so I hate to like down on it, but I felt like there was something that I was missing, and I wanted to kind of get back to some of the work that I was doing at UMass Dartmouth that was more experimental, more interactive, and at designing at different scales. So in 2010, after working for 11 years at Core Group, which was amazing, and I was established, I was married, and I was like, if I'm going to go to grad school, which is something I always wanted to do, my wife and I talked about it, this was the time. So I kind of like uprooted from a really great, stable job, and then went back to school. So I was a 31-year-old grad student. Got to meet all these really interesting people. These are some of the classmates that I had at UMass Dartmouth, and I'll tell a story about where this image comes from. So the RISD grad school was there was 3-year program and a 2-year program. And every year, students would, a self-directed project would be a poster design. So you could see all the students within the class, get to know them, get to know the first years, the second years, and the thesis students. So in between my first year and second year at RISD, we would have like a barbecue at the beginning of the semester. And I remember having this like fever dream where I had designed the poster for the class. So I was outlining, all the students that were in the class, but in the poster that I could see on the wall, in the studio was animated. So all the faces were blinking, everything was moving. And I was like, oh my God, I have to this poster is going to be so amazing. And the next day I went to that cookout and spoke with a couple of my classmates. And I said, did we talk about this? Because I think I had a dream, or it was real, I can't tell. And there was a poster that we did for the class, and it was animated and it was coming to life. And they were like, no, we definitely didn't talk about it. You must have been hallucinating or something. But they were like, we should totally do it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, how can we make this happen? So couldn't really make a piece of paper animate. I mean, there's some, e-ink and stuff that can do things, but as a design workaround, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to make an animated poster, but what I will do is create, a really simple algorithm or system to the design process where we'll take pictures of everyone in the class, and the system and the structure will be 4 photos per student, one with eyes closed, one with eyes open, closed, and open, 4 shots. We'll set up a basic tripod, and that will be the system. We'll roll it out and see what happens. So this was the poster that we came up with for the class, made it all black and white, so there was consistency to it. But I wasn't satisfied with the poster. So I built a really simple website where you could hover over the faces and then the faces would blink, which which was interesting. I felt like I was getting closer, but it was a little too obvious and didn't have that experience that I was looking for. So I had been looking into some different technology using computer vision, where I could do basically what you see a lot on, augmented reality, or, we're using computer vision right now. You're looking at me through this Zoom webinar. The computer's picking up my movement and just replicating it as video. But there's a lot of things you can do with computer vision in terms of interactivity. So this is a schematic of the plan that I came up with, which was, what I wanted you to do is I wanted a projection on the wall, and when you wave at the projection, all the faces blink. So it would be interactive, just like the mouse moving across the screen, but I wanted to pick up your gestures. So what I had set up was a webcam that was on the ceiling, that there was a target on the floor. So that grid you see in the middle is the target. And then as people walked into the space, there was a projector, which is number 2, projecting on the wall all of the faces. And as you moved in the space, the faces would blink. And I'll show documentation of the final piece. So as I put together in that schematic, that grid that was on the ground I just used masking tape, and then there were all little printed out pieces with the people's names on the floor. Step for their name, it corresponded to that was on the wall. And one of the really interesting things about that was that when no one was in the lobby space, all the faces closed, so they were essentially asleep. when you walk through the space, you kind of woke up the wall. So that was something I was really excited about, like being fully immersed in design, not just not just on print, but actually feeling feeling totally immersed in design. Another project that I did while I was in grad school, kind of keeping with the same technique or style, was working on this projection piece. I used to live in the South End in Boston, and this amazing radio and TV repair shop. And one of the, part of my, thesis and research while I was at RISD, I wanted to explore old and new technologies, and I wanted to find out this TV repair and radio service had been in business for 75 years, and that that white wall is a garage door, and I used to see a guy sitting in there, and I always wondered, like, how does this guy stay in business? And I always wanted to interview him, but every time I went there, the garage was closed. And then I did some more research, and I found out that he finally did have to close up shop. And I wanted to do something to monumentalize this building, because I knew in short time they were going to tear this down and make more condos like they do everywhere else in the South End. Sure enough, they did wind up doing that. But I just loved the signage of it. And I also used it as a design roadblock. I sort of hit a wall on it, but then use that as a pivoting point to create something new. So I thought, when looking at this garage door, it had the proportion of a 16:9 screen, and also just the lines that went across it seemed like looking at an old analog TV, or like when you take video of a screen, it kind of flickers. So I thought, it'd be really interesting to use this as a screen, project on this. So as people walked by, the projection would sort of bring this space to life. So similar to the Blink project, this is just a schematic of the thought process. There was the bus stop marquee, which I wanted to put a projector on. And as people walked in front of the screen, there would be a web camera that would pick up their movement and then project onto the wall. Again, sort of like waking up the wall, monumentalizing this building. And here's a demo of that. So again, a pivot to an idea that I had to get more information about this building, but pivoting into this sort of simple representation, using the experience I had on that Blink project to sort of blend that analog and digital experience from the old and the new, using the square pixels as the projection, and just capturing sort of the everyday life of people walking by. And a lot of those things I learned, or at least were introduced, were while I was working at Fathom Information Design. I took an internship while I was at grad school at RISD, and Fathom Information Design is a data visualization, information design studio that is in Boston as well, that was started by Ben Fry, who's also the co-creator of Processing with Casey Reese. So I got introduced into those computer vision techniques and a lot of other interactive and info design concepts while I was there and at RISD. So we did, this was one of the first projects that I had worked on and documented for General Electric. It was this 6-foot by 9-foot interactive screen that was in the lobby of GE in Connecticut. And it was representing all turbine power that GE, all the turbines that they had around the world. So I'll play a demo of this. So one of the things I loved about the work that Ben Fry had been doing while he was at MIT, as well as the work at Fathom, was the sense of typography. So a lot of digital agencies really fall short when it comes to typography, but Ben, coming from an undergrad in graphic design and bringing that into uh, more of his digital experiences, kept that sense of typography, as you could see in that piece. But it's about the technology, the form, uh, the content of the piece, and then the documentation, which is important in all three of the projects that I showed, from the Blink to uh, the 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 GE piece. So we worked for all these big name clients, distilling their data into something useful, accessible, intuitive. And it was a really great experience for me. I worked there for 5.5 years, and got to work on these like really amazing, high profile projects. But we also had a lot of fun when I worked at Fathom, and we did a lot of self-initiated projects. So it was almost like, again, still being in school, but working. So one of the projects that we worked on was is called the Rocky Morphology. We kicked around a lot of ideas at lunch, and um, one of them was talking about the narrative structure that goes through all the Rocky movies. And whether you're familiar with it or not, it's all about Rocky Balboa sort of starting from nothing, overcoming obstacles, and then accomplishing victory of winning the bout. So the first film was, before I was even born, was the Academy Award winning film directed by Sylvester Stallone. And then he got so much acclaim from that. The second one was also, uh, you know, really well done. And then it kind of just became a formula. So Rocky 3, kind of had the same system. Rocky 4 was the same. They were just fighting in Russia. Rocky 5, Rocky 6. Now we've moved in. This has been going on for 40 years with Creed and Creed 2. So I wanted to see, what is the overarching narrative structure that goes into all these films. And I thought of Kurt Vonnegut did this great lecture on the shape of story. So Kurt Vonnegut's, Slaughterhouse Five, was also a professor, and uh, talked a lot about like visualizing narratives. So these are linear narratives, but he always talked about the idea of like, the X and Y axis, the X axis being beginning and end, and the Y axis being at the bottom ill fortune, and the top of the Y axis good fortune. So the one in the top left is talking about the story of a man in a hole. Man's having a good day, falls in a hole, ill fortune, gets out of the hole, good fortune. So I thought, okay, maybe I can think about different ways to think of the narrative arc through all of the Rocky movies and see where the alignments are. I also thought about readings from Joseph Campbell and Vladimir Prop, who look at morphology, or the structure of folk tales, fairy tales. And Joseph Campbell also did character arcs, narrative arcs. Joseph Campbell was hugely influential on George Lucas, and George Lucas credits Joseph Campbell for really helping inspire the story of Luke Skywalker. You see the same story in Rocky, which is all, very similar story to the Bible. So these stories have been repeated over and over and over. So I looked at the sort of like visual uh, relationships between each one of the movies. So this is looking at from top to bottom, Rocky 1 through 5, trying to find a relationship. There are fight scenes, there's training scenes, there's like an epic montage, and there's dialogue, but I couldn't find any relationship there. Kind of zoomed out a little bit more to try to see more relationships. Again, nothing really came out clear visually. Looked at the entire film as a strip. So each one of these squares is uh, one one frame per minute. So you can see the length of the first two were longer, the third one was shorter, the fourth was the shortest, and so on. But I realized I was getting too analytical about it and trying to let a system or a computer generated algorithm kind of give me the answer. And then it kind of hit me one day that like I'd been saying from the beginning, there's only certain elements that go into these movies. There's the dialogue, there's training, which is when they're in the gym in real time. There's montage. That's usually when there's like the turnaround and there's some slow motion and like epic song. There's a lot of time they spend in the locker room before fighting, and then there's the actual fight scene, and then of course the credits. So I sat down and looked at watched all these movies and did a time code of whenever those categories hit within the movie. So I sat down in Premiere in a spreadsheet and just did a start clip and an end clip, whether it was credits, fight, dialogue, training, montage, or fight, and then wrote down the exact moments that these things happened. My wife, I like to think, was really impressed with what I was doing, but she was like, I kept telling her I was working, but I was just like watching Rocky movies. And so the final piece turned into this uh, pretty simple information design where these are just bar graphs, they're stacked bar plots. And then the colors indicate the dialogue, the training, montage, pre-fight, and fight. So you can scrub through these pieces, and then at the top, the thumbnails change for the actual movie. So you can sort of have this like quick overview of what's happening within the movies. You can see the length. But one of the interesting things is being able to just focus on one of these categories like montage. We can just look at the movie only in montage or only in training or only in fighting. And it's just an interesting way to sort of like look at videos in a different way. And this got quite a bit of pickup on the internet when it came out, and someone had tweeted that there was scientific proof that Rocky IV was the best movie because it was the shortest runtime and had the most montage. So if you have not seen any of the Rocky movies, I do recommend Rocky IV as kind of getting the most bang for your buck. Okay, so that's a little bit of the past. And sorry, I'm like hustling through all this. I just want to give enough time for Q&A. So UMass Dartmouth, Core Group, RISD, Fathom, and I worked for Fathom, for over 5 years, had a great experience with them, but I felt like it was time to go out on my own. I always wanted to, try to have my own studio, but it's a huge risk. I always wanted to teach, but it was like, I don't know if I'm a teacher, so I finally, cut the cord and, took another big leap and started my own design practice, which is essentially me. I have one full-time employee now, and I also teach full-time. So I'm kind of burning the candle at both ends, but I absolutely love it. So Design Axl is a sort of amalgamation of all the things that I've done since UMass Dartmouth: the branding, the web, and moving into data visualization and platform or software platform design. Here's a little overview of some of the work that I've been doing. I'm finally getting a chance to update my website with all work that I've done at Fathom. All that work that you saw is in my archive, and I can share links at the end. But really working between the branding and platform. So it's been 3.5 years, and I've been doing some sort of postcard or mailer, and I'm super excited about this because this postcard just got printed, just got delivered yesterday. Here's a detail of it. I don't know if anyone can see this, but it's the 2021 Design Axl postcard printed with a letterpress shop in Southeastern Mass, EM Letterpress. And like I said, I have one full-time employee, Arjun, who's a former student of mine. He is in New Delhi, and so we do a lot of Zooming. He's in the future 12 hours or something, or 9.5 hours. So this is us celebrating 2021. And I'll just go through a couple projects. We have probably like 15-20 minutes left, so hopefully people are still holding on. One of the branding projects that I've been working on for a while is for Grid City. They're a brewery out in Utah. So it's a good friend of mine who, with some other people, started a brewery. And it's been sort of a labor of love and also just a really fun project to work on. And so the name of the brewery is Grid City. And, it comes from their evaluation of Salt Lake City as being this like major grid. And there's grids in every city. And that's kind of what they want, the scalability, but they really wanted to focus on Salt Lake City. So, Salt Lake City is, designed to tell you in Salt Lake City, the grid is designed to tell you exactly where you are in relationship to the temple. So the Mormon Brigham Young created the city based on this base meridian. So everything Brigham Young put down where the temple was, everything to the right was east, everything to the left was west, north, and south. And I thought this was a really interesting metaphor. And it was a grid, so we, usually think about, squares and things aligned, but I kind of like radiating metaphor, this circle that was coming out of it. Went through a lot of iterations of thinking about how to design this logo, and then finally wound up on this, like playing with the G and the C as the circle, and then this post, which is the center of Utah. But at the same time, it's also fun. It looks like someone drinking a beer. So this became the final logo. And have had a lot of fun with this project. So this is an animation that Arjun and I worked on that represents Grid City as a beer company in Utah, and then it transitions into the logo. So it's been a lot of fun, working on this project. They have this whole suite of cans and seltzers, and I'll just play this really quickly. But they were able to build their brewery and get it open. They were supposed to open March last year, so right as the pandemic shut down, but they've been able to be successful. So I'm really excited to continue to work with them. Okay, I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit because I'm worried I'm running out of time, and my friend from Grid City is texting me right now. So another project that I've been working on, most of these projects are all like within pandemic time. So Grid City, even though they're a brewery with a pub and restaurant, they've been able to maintain, and I'm really happy for them. Another project that I've been working on, which happened since the pandemic started, was MediaVac. So I would say this is on the platform data visualization side. I'll play this video and then we can talk about it in a second. So this project is really hot off the press, or digital press, whatever you want to call it. I've been working with this startup company, MediaVax, and they're building a machine learning and AI platform to identify misinformation specifically through Twitter, but will be scaled across all social media platforms. So essentially, you copy and paste a tweet, you put it into the MediaVax, it analyzes it, and then gives you a score. So this has been a really fun and obviously timely project, over the past 6 months that I've been working on. So that it gives you a score through story, source, and spread. So the source of whoever has sent out the tweet. It does an analysis on the story itself, like what's actually written, and then it tells you how viral it's been, and then it breaks down into these specific categories within each one of those larger pieces. So this has been a really fun project. That documentation is something that is in the works, but I'll definitely be posting it as soon as it's done. And process is a huge part of the work that I do, and always has been since I was at Core Group and at Fathom, and now on my own. I really try to structure this for my client projects as well as my teaching projects, where systematically look through a linear process and also make it iterative. And so it's not just about I don't just sit here in my office for 6 weeks and design something and then present it. It's really like a rapid prototyping and iterative process between, listening to clients through discovery, having divergent ideas about, all the different possibilities, and then honing in on the structural design, the actual interface, the information architecture, the pixel perfect things, and then to delivery. It's really important to not just have a great idea, but actually be able to implement it. And I do partner with a lot of development agencies, or with the client themselves that have software developers. So the next project is also a software project, but a front end commercial web project for a real estate agency called T3 Advisors. So you can see the same process that goes into it. It's always being modified, that process, but I really try to apply that uh, to whether it's a web, commercial project, or it's a startup, even branding, and with my teaching. Um, the last client project I'll show is Math Talk, another platform, UI UX, and also incorporates augmented reality. So Math Talk is another startup that I worked with, who is trying to engage young children with math concepts and not give them sort of like formulas for learning about math, but just thinking about spatial relationships, sizes, edges, so geometric patterns. I worked with Math Talk, the company itself. We teamed up with the University of Chicago. We also teamed up with the School of Education at BU, the Wheelock School, and worked with myself as the app designer and another graphic designer. So one of the core parts of this project, which came out of the discovery, was it would be really interesting to engage this app and create augmented reality, so children could play with the phone, but it's not something that they're going to just hand off to a kid and keep them entertained, but actually have them ask questions. So what shapes do you see? What forms do you see? Straight lines, curved lines. So this is a prototype of thinking, okay, these really simple blocks, how can we make this come to life? So I partnered with some students at Boston University in the computer science department, and there's an AR VR club, and we started prototyping some of these things that you can do AR with on your phone and on iPad. So it essentially became this prototype where you could move things around, add and subtract blocks, move blocks around. And here's a quick demo of my two daughters. On the left is Joy and Flora playing with the app.
Today is August 8th. We're doing a Math Talk demo with Joy and Flora Grady. Okay. Okay. So now try to play with the app, and I'm just going to take a little video. And tell me what you see.
I see a ball. I see a circle, and I see a circle. I see another circle. I see squares. And circles and some other shapes. I see one square. And then I can tap on it. And a lot of balls.
Can you move the iPad around so you can see?
Whoa. Whoa. I'm I'm gonna make another square. There we go. Wait. I see a circle, and then I just have one.
So getting validation, so getting, always testing these things and making sure they work, depending on whatever the audience is, from 4 and 6-year-olds to, company executives. So that's, a fire hose of a lot of the work that I've done. Now I want to just talk briefly about some of the work that I'm doing at BU. So I've been there. I'm in my 4th year teaching at Boston University. I teach the undergrad and graduate graphic design studios. I teach motion graphics, interactive design, typography, and other sort of graphic design classes. I also co-teach a class with the computer science department at Boston University, where we do those platform and software product design assignments, essentially student-driven assignments that go from idea to prototype at the end of the semester. So we blend graphic design students with computer science students to actually create a functioning prototype with code and design at the end of the semester. So it's a lot of fun, and again, like, combines all the things that I love. This is me with my first class that I ever taught at BU, and when we didn't have to wear masks. So now this is kind of what, as you know, classes look like these days. A lot of Zoom. That's my office on the left. But I think BU is doing a really great job in terms of like building the hybrid and trying to get us back in school. It's super hard to teach with a mask on, I'm not going to lie. So that's me on the right, sort of first day in the fall, and on the left, this is what should be our art gallery, which has been converted into a COVID testing facility. So it's like a piece of contemporary art for sure, but I'll be excited when we get back to like traditional art. So this has been really like a, augmented reality, I would like to say, since we moved into this virtual teaching. So just like the projects I had, from UMass Dartmouth to now, it's like, okay, well, just got to deal with it, got to pivot. So I thought it would be interesting to bring augmented reality into the project. So we did a lot of screen-based things, but I also wanted to engage students, so it wasn't just on the black mirror, but we're actually playing with some augmented reality projects. This is what my classes look like now, or this is what it looked like in the fall. A lot of people on Zoom, but I have all these cameras. I kind of like get excited about it because it's a new challenge, and they've supplied us with some pretty interesting technology, and we just make it work. I found that large scale projection has been helping a lot. So because we can't really handle small things or circle around a desk to talk about work, projecting things or making installations or making things still physical so we can stay at a distance but talk about them, I think has been a silver lining. We're still doing like installation work, still doing print work. This is an installation from last semester. We got a Rezo printer at the studio, so did a lot of Rezo printing and did a lot of did this installation in the gallery at BU. This is a wide shot of the whole class. So everyone had space to work, but still had a sense of community, the folks that were on campus. And then there was there was these large 50-inch screens in the middle where students that weren't on campus, could show their work. I'm also working in collaboration with the School of Theater and working with one of the theater instructors on a computer vision project. So again, sort of taking from things that I've done in the past. And we've already done one performance. This was 2 years ago that engaged with computer vision and projection. And that project I've been working on for 2 years now, and we've been developing it more and more. This is one of my graphic design students working with computer science students in a light lab in the theater department. But it doesn't compare to working closely, hands-on. This was a picture from last year, my interactive design class. Again, working with materials, working with design in different ways. We did all these Arduino touch boards and had a lot of fun working on physical projects as well as, from the, again, micro type detail all the way, the whole gamut I like to explore with. So I'm going to wrap up, but things that I look for in my students is curiosity, to be collaborators, to be multidisciplinary, storytellers, digital crafts people, fearless of tools and technology, and to trust your instincts. And those are some of the things that I learned from my teachers at UMass Dartmouth, and I hope I am passing them on to the next generation. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Sorry if that was too much information, but I'm really excited to share that with you. So thank you very much.
That was great, James. Thank you. Thank you very much. I know we have a couple questions, so I'll just dive right into them. What advice do you have for graphic design seniors that are developing their capstone project?
I guess to think about that list of things that I put together, and maybe starting at the bottom, is really trusting your instincts, and also using your curiosity. Don't design something that you think someone wants. Design something for yourself, and then test it with people, and try to, even if it's a small audience, think about who would want to engage with this, and try not to. One of the things I mentioned is try not to wait 4 to 6 weeks thinking about a project and then scramble at the last minute to output something. Force yourself into a system where you're making stuff every day. Check in with someone every day, especially if you're virtual. Find a buddy that you can just bounce ideas off of. Your faculty is there for you. Just have these quick check-ins, and try not to I talk about cerebral paralysis, where you're thinking so hard, especially when it comes to capstone projects. This has got to be the penultimate project that I've ever made. It's a buildup. It's just a moment in time. When you finish that project, you'll just carry that into the next thing. So think of it as more small chunks, as opposed to this heavy weight. And if you get locked, do the thing that you think is the most fun. If it's just drawing, if it's just kicking a soccer ball, if it's I don't know, crumbling up paper, just give yourself the freedom to not put so much pressure on yourself.
That's great. Great advice. One of the questions we had, sounds like most of your work crosses the line between tech and art. Do you think that over time in the future, technology will be increasing more important for art, no matter what category or medium?
I would say yes. I think that we look at technology as magic, and I think that art informs technology as much as technology can support art. And I think you're far better off being thinking about all the different ways things can be created, and not just what the shiny new technology is. And don't let the technology drive the concept or the art. But I think there's always going to be room for all different types of tools and mediums, from painting and drawing to code to interactive things. So I think in the past I would have been putting things oh, that's old technology, and wanting to be on the bleeding edge. But I guess maybe in my old age I realized that everything has its value. So I think the most important thing is to be an artist first, and then let the tools help get you to what you want, and also learn from the tools too, because sometimes you have an idea of what you want to make, and as designers and artists, we can think about workarounds and okay, this didn't work, but maybe I can use this one part of that technology to support the piece. So I think they really go hand in hand. But I'm biased, but I think the art and the creative thinking is always more important than a specific tool at that time.
Perfect. Sorry, I don't know, my camera wasn't working there. Do you have a favorite program that you use for your animation work?
I use I definitely use a lot of After Effects. I'm not gonna lie. So I don't know if it's my favorite thing, but it's a good tool for sure for animation. In my motion graphics class, I start off. We do a lot of video editing actually first because I think it's really important to understand how to do edits and how to tell a story before we get into any After Effects. So I think it's really important if folks are interested in uh, animated graphics to really study editing. And um, there's so much more study that's been put into cinema studies and film than there has in graphic design. And so it's almost like there's like this really rich space to learn about editing before you get into uh, animated graphics and also understand typography. And I think that's really where the magic comes in motion graphics.
Awesome. Next question is, what were some of the challenges, expected or unexpected, that you encountered while starting your own studio, and how did you overcome them?
I think that's a good question. I feel like I've been really, really lucky, to be honest with you, and I'm super grateful for anyone that has given me the opportunity to work on a project. So I try not to like. I guess I don't know. I try not to like. Honestly, I'm always worried about jinxing myself with the business because I like even through this pandemic, like I just feel so fortunate that I'm getting work, and but I feel like there's still work out there. I guess starting the business, I set up the structure enough so I had the safety net with the teaching. So it wasn't like I was completely putting my neck out there. So I feel like I could start small, so I could take on projects that were portfolio building or like working with Grid City, which were friends who really weren't paying me. They like ship me beer every once in a while, and T-shirts. I think I have a T-shirt on now. Um, so it's like doing the fun projects, but then like as it's grown, and I definitely feel more pressure now having like someone that I have to pay every week to help me with work. So that's like pressure. So I have taken on projects which I know it's like, okay, I think this project is going to pay well, but I'm not quite sure. Like I don't have the answer for them right away. So it's a bit more of a struggle. But I enjoy like learning from different industries and trying to figure it out with them. Um, but yeah, I feel like I maybe it's easier because I don't have a lot of the overhead that many companies like Core Group or Fathom. Like I admire them so much because it's like, I mean, if you knew the overhead that they have to pay, it's if you really knew what you're getting into, you probably wouldn't do it because it's like so expensive to pay rent and pay, for everything. It just costs so much money that it's like even these big firms like, it's hard to like really make money. It's a passion. You have to have the passion, that's for sure.
Awesome. And I know we have to run, so we have a little bit of time. We have one final question. And it's really about, this is from a freshman who says advice for a graphic design major who doesn't know what they want to do with their degree, but really just in general for those students that may be thinking about going into CVPA or graphic design and are worried about what they're actually going to do. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think I guess I got lucky again with like choosing graphic design because the thing about graphic design is like industry, like you can work in any industry. You can work almost with any medium. You can find ways to pivot, like, do do what you want to do when you're in school and be aware of what's happening in like design studios and industry and really study typography, study animation, like if those are your passions, but also like think about like doing painting, like you got to be able to adapt, and as artists we all have to evolve, but especially as graphic designers, like you have to constantly be able to pivot. So don't think at your freshman year like, okay, I'm going to work doing software development for this agency and I'm going to make a lot of money, because I feel like that's going to limit you and you're going to start making a narrow piece of work. I would make as many like different things as you can, and then always think about contextualizing the work uh, through writing. So I do a lot of Medium blog posts and take the work and write about it. I also do a lot of documentation of the project. So you saw a lot of like, it's the project, but then it's also the documentation of the project. So that proves that you're like a really, I think that's evidence for really powerful graphic designer to be able to like reflect on the work and then almost make a new project out of the final project. So yeah, don't limit yourself and enjoy your time. You're a freshman, like do the coolest stuff in foundation, and then just completely immerse yourself. And if you feel frustrated by students or faculty or anything that's going on, like trust yourself and just like do whatever you can and find the people that support you and feed your soul and your creativity.
I think that's great advice to end on. James, can't thank you enough. This was great. I can basically volunteer if you ever need anyone to watch movies for you. That was awesome. I was like, this is the great. I would love to watch all the Rocky movies, just the montages. It would be a great Saturday afternoon. So can't thank you enough for that. Thank you to everyone who was able to come today. We appreciate you and many successes in your future.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here.
Stay safe.
Thank you.